Welcome to Freedom Fridays here on Eat Radio Australia, right there in the US, on the ground. A man who knows a little bit about freedom, just a little bit. It's Dan Worthington. Good to see you, mate.
Hey, nice to see you guys. It's really nice to
Mate,
be back. We haven't
It is, it
really
is. A lot to
done
get through
anything.
today.
We haven't been back since we talked about Charlie last because we've just been tied up with other things. So glad to be back, get caught up on things. Appreciate it.
Well, the world is still well and truly talking about Charlie, and let's be honest, I think for a very long time to come, in fact, generations, I think. Beside me, look, it's Derek Whitaker, mate. It's good to see you and interested to know your opinions of things we're going to be chatting about today.
Always look forward to it. It's crazy what's going on in the world at the moment. There's just so much information. I mean, far out, Dan. You know, the US government's supposed to be shut down, but there's still plenty going on.
Oh, yeah, no, there's no question about it. Democrats got mud on their face about the shutdown, but Trump is moving forward on all four cylinders with his agenda, and so there are the peace talks in with the Hamas and that kind of thing, and the West Bank is moving forward. Trump. I saw you guys' a program and the Wealth Program talking about his United Nations talk and about all the things that he's accomplished to create peace deals around the world. It's just absolutely incredible.
It's quite a list, isn't it?
Nobody wants to give him credit for any of this stuff. And so, but it seems to be that he's succeeding on all of his agenda items. American first, aid realignment, all the other things that are going on, the court opinions that are coming down in his favor, 6-3, the higher educational agenda's been pushed forward so that it's been going great. The tougher position on the drug cartels and the enforcement, sanctions and pressure on Iran's oil networks, and preventing the funding of foreign NGOs that aren't aligned with American values, shifting global influence towards strategic priorities, toughening up the U.S. military along priorities so that they're fighting force instead of, fighting with their purses. It's really amazing what can happen. And what has it been? 10 months?
It hasn't been long. I'm actually going to call you out on something the other day, and I'm a bit concerned. You talked about American values, but you said running on 4 cylinders, mate. If it's America, it's all about running on a V8. Come on.
Trump's administration is about traditional American values and about those things that Charlie was talking about every day as he presented the ideas and asked people to argue about the ideas in an open forum about freedom and facts about freedom and that kind of thing. And Trump, the facts are on Trump's side. We know that. The media, at least the legacy media, always tries to spin things, put things in false light, and American people are not taking it. Now there's a minority, 33% minority that buys all this BS. I don't know how many of those are illegal aliens, and but the point is that ICE is moving forward despite the Democratic governors fighting everything. It's interesting is Trump has to go to the Democrat states because the Democrats are not controlling the streets. They're not protecting their people. They're just not. I mean, you'll see that in Republican states. People just don't put up with it, so the movement by the conservatives and the Christian. I mean, even in my church, there have been a sharp increase in people joining and becoming joining conservative Christian movement around the world. I think it's remarkable.
It's been a big return to religion.
Yeah, both.
There's no doubt about that. Yeah.
And I don't care what flavor of Christian you are or good, faithful, a person of faith, whether you're Muslim or Jewish. It's a good thing that God is back in the perspective in the and the dialogue of ideas. Faith
Well,
is important.
to mention something actually, as far as obviously, Charlie Kirk spoke so much about faith. It was a big part of who he was, and still is. I think he'll live on forever in so many different ways. But something I found interesting, as far as here we are in Australia, the influence of Charlie Kirk and speaking about faith has very much reached Australia from the point of view of I had a Facebook post, and we talk always about free speech here at Edge, okay, and what we did here, we exercised our free speech. Now, Pink, the artist, the singer, she actually exercised her free speech, and she made some really disgraceful comments and made a very disparaging post about Charlie Kirk. Now, what I did is I put a post saying, thank you very much for doing that. You've now deleted the post. Thank you, Pink. I appreciate you deleted it, but we've decided to delete all your music from our Edge Radio Australia library. We will not be playing Pink anymore, right? So 2 million people interacted with that post in about 30 hours.
Wow.
Right? And most of it, when I say most of it, I would say comfortably 98% of it is very, very positive. Most of it is actually people on the conservative side just saying, we've had enough. We see that the people on the left are, they like violence. They're against those traditional values. They don't want people to get along. So from our little standpoint, that was just a really interesting touch. And yeah, it shows people are very happy to vote with their wallets and vote with their feet. And we got, I would say, a massive amount. Couldn't put a number on it. So many people said, well, it looks like we've just found our new radio station because we're sick and tired of artists speaking down to us and challenging. And no, challenging is not the right word, sorry. Belittling their faith and what they believe in.
I think people are tired of being told what to think as well. I think there's that emerging in Australia at the moment too. I'm observing where people are just tired. Stop telling me how I should respond. Stop telling me what I should think. If we can't have open debate in culture, we've got a problem.
Yeah. But it goes both ways. Right.
Yeah, and I was just going to add that, Dan, if I may, there are consequences to freedom of speech. All right. So people think, it's open slather that I can say whatever I want, however I want. No, you can't. Right. Because whether you like it or not, you'll be held accountable for what you say. Okay.
Yeah.
And you can also be held accountable for not saying anything. All right. And being silent. We've seen that where, there's that line, that ancient line that says, great evil abounds when good men do nothing.
Yeah.
Right. And
So
inaction. So I think this is the responsibility. If you have freedom, you have responsibilities. Okay, freedom comes at a price. It's not just I can just mouth off whatever I think and say and there's no consequences. No,
completely agree.
You actually have to take responsibility for what you say, accountability. And, it's funny when we come from a broadcasting background, Aaron, if you wouldn't say it on air, then maybe you shouldn't say it. And I'm amazed how many people don't use that same protocol when it comes to putting stuff on social media.
Oh, I agree. Well, okay, in fairness to them, they haven't grown up or they haven't worked in or they haven't been exposed to an industry where that's kind of the go. I mean, let's face it, social media has opened the world up so differently that people are, but all of these people who have become broadcasters, all of these people have become publishers who maybe don't understand the nuance of the smaller details, right?
Yeah. I'm not a broadcaster. I'm just a guy with opinions, right? And so there are times when I'm not very careful about what I say because I tend to be pretty direct. But that's the thing about America is it's an open it's an open platform of ideas, and there shouldn't be censorship. There shouldn't be censorship on the left either, unless the left has done something that it violates a community standard, like Kimmel did, right? I mean, what he did is violate the community standard because he issued a falsehood about what really happened, and he deserved probably to be spanked a little. But
well, Dan, that's kind of the point. You've just made the comment that you are not a traditional broadcaster. You have an opinion, and you have every right to it, just as Jimmy Kimmel does. But we also have the right to understand there are consequences for those actions, for those words.
Yeah.
Kimmel didn't understand that. So many people don't understand that. But when you open your mouth, yeah, absolutely, there is a price to be paid for freedom.
Well, he's never been called on it before.
My mother had some great advice, if I can quote my mother for a moment.
Absolutely.
And she said, don't ever put in writing what you wouldn't want to appear in court. And I thought that was really, really good advice. And, I actually remembered that working in law firms and accounting firms and that sort of thing as well, and financial planning firms, going, don't put in writing what you wouldn't want to appear in court. And, my dad used to joke and say she could have been a lawyer. But it's the same for social media. If you don't want that to appear in court, then don't put it out there.
That's right.
Well, there's ways of saying things that are more appropriate in expressing your opinion. I really think, and I hope, and I believe the conservative right movement is this way. We really want peace. We really want to get along with everybody. We want the truth to come out. We want to be able to express the truth. The problem with the last 6 years, really, because they started censoring Trump even when he was president, is that they censored our opinions. They tried to shut us up about the things that we believed. We were given a raft of crap about things that weren't true, that were being pushed by the media, by the international groups, by the Council for Relations and others, that weren't true. And they really expected all of us to believe it if they said it loud enough and enough times. Most of America understood that we were being ghosted. We were being lied to. And that's just not something. I mean, we have a sense for what's right and wrong. And we just don't accept it when we're being lied to. That's wrong.
Well, it certainly was a huge amount of absolute, clear, blatant gaslighting going on. And I mean, I think that's been part of media and part of propaganda for a very long time, but certainly in the last 10 years, it has accelerated. Now, you just mentioned about the fact of feeling free to have your opinion. I want to ask your opinion, Dan, on this one, and Derek as well. Over the last about roughly 4 days here in Western Australia, there has been raids on people's houses. There've been a massive police operation going to generally mostly a lot of farmers, a lot of recreational gun users. They've literally been going to their homes and confiscating, and I would tend to call it stealing their guns from these people if they've had an opinion in any way about being a sovereign citizen. So if the police commissioner believes that your political ideals don't align with the Western Australian Labor Party, you've lost your guns. Now, as an American, really curious to see how you see that, Dan.
Well, good luck with that. This is one of the reasons why we have the right to bear arms, is to protect ourselves against tyranny. And we have certain fundamental rights, and one of them is the right to bear arms. And the one of them is to redress our government grievances. One is to protect our liberty and our freedom. And our house is our castle in the United States, and the government is restricted from doing certain things. I guess in Australia, for some reason, the one party, you're kind of experiencing the same thing we did with the Biden administration. They're trying to push things down our throat. They would have tried this same thing as what's happening there if they thought they could get away with it. But they wouldn't be able to get away with it here, because there are too many people that would stand up to them and say, no, not only screw you, but hell no, you're not going to take our guns. We have fundamental right to bear arms, and it's for the very precise reason why to prevent you from doing something like this. It's fundamentally wrong. Now, I don't know this whole thing about sovereign citizens and all that, but there should be a right, a freedom of political expression and that shouldn't be tied to the right to bear arms. I mean,
Yeah, I
you know, as
understand.
long as you're not espousing something violent, you know, or
Sovereign
radical.
citizens. Look, I'm not a sovereign citizen. I don't sort of follow that ideology, but I believe in people's right to feel that way. A sovereign citizen basically works on their beliefs about the law surrounded by the Magna Carta. Okay, that's pretty much how they base things. So,
Yeah, that's
I mean,
reasonable.
yeah, you would think so. They also don't believe. I mean, I don't want to speak for them because, as I say, I'm not on top of all the details. But that, to me, that's the essential part of it. What are your thoughts there, Derek?
Couple of thoughts. I think one I would want to have a better understanding before really commenting on it publicly is under what piece of legislation can those guns be seized in terms of what they've done that in Western Australia.
In 2024, like literally 12 months ago, they brought in new laws.
I understand that. Yeah, I understand that, but I don't want to understand. I mean, I think a lot of the thing that those laws that were passed, they were rushed through. I don't think everybody knew what was going on because, one, I don't think the politicians knew. I don't think the police department actually knew as well, because they were trying to scramble to stay on top of it. And I don't think gun owners knew. So again, I think it was a piece of legislation that was rushed through.
Sure.
And I think its intent behind it was to make it more difficult for people to own and possess firearms. That's what I think was behind it.
I agree.
But to actually then go around confiscating it on the basis of what people post on social media, I don't know what piece of legislation they can do that under. I'd like to look at that and what actually states closer, and why they're doing that and why they feel the need. I think in terms of the whole sovereign citizen thing, if there's comments there, I think there's a vagueness about that. Is what is it actually proposing? What does it actually mean? I've heard what you said about the whole Magna Carta.
Sure.
But
well,
I think people can use that term and flip it out there. And I don't think they actually, what they think it means and what other people think it means could be two different two different things. And I find it interesting that it's, it came up in Jackie Lammy's speech on the federal level in Australia recently, and she lumped a whole bunch of, it was Nazism, sovereign citizens, what else was it? It was anti-vaxxers, very right-wing voices, put them all in the one group. And it's like, you can't do that. You can't just put a sweeping brushstroke over people's things. And I think her definition of what that might mean might be very different from someone who actually calls himself that. And so, what actually is it?
Well, yeah. So in the commissioner's speech, the police commissioner here in WA, he said that it is his right under the law to consider who is a fit and proper person to hold a firearm. Right? So they are basically, they're inflicting their moral code on people because of their political beliefs.
The other part of that piece of legislation, which is causing some alarm bells, I think, is that I think there's a thought of making gun owners see a doctor for a checkup every year.
Yeah,
and
I've heard that.
There is concern that if a firearm owner is feeling depressed, that they may not actually reach out and get help because they don't want to lose their guns, right? And I think there's that concern that's going on. So you've got to think about the flow-on effect of these kind of legislations that I think when they rush through legislation, they may not think about what the actual causes or consequences of those decisions might be.
Yeah, I completely agree.
And when it's rushed and when there's not open dialogue between the concerned parties, as in groups that represent firearm ownership and clubs and that sort of stuff, when there isn't proper consultation, but an agenda to just, no, we're going to sweep it and do this, then there's problems. These problems come up.
You've just absolutely nailed something, though. I mean, in Australia right now, there is no proper consultation with the stakeholders, right? We're finding that right across the board. Happened with the Aboriginal Heritage Act, of course. It's been happening, obviously, with the wind turbine industry, which Age Radio Australia, we're putting on a symposium very, very soon, which will have a couple of Australian senators. We're actually having an expert coming in from the US. Now these are sort of people they need to be consulting with, but government aren't doing that.
I think this is the approach we need to have. I think there must be more time spent. If there is a problem in the community, there must be 95% of the time should be spent trying to understand why there is a problem, as opposed to just putting things in place and doing a Band-Aid fix. Like case in point, what happened in Victoria recently, where they made this laws around machete. You can't own a machete now because somebody was attacked with a machete. This is a Band-Aid fix. It's not going to the heart of what the issue is.
Right.
The heart of the issue is you have to ask the question, why did someone attack somebody with a machete? What was going on in that person's life? What social causes, where it's a problem? I think a lot of it comes back to this, is that our families have been disintegrating for many, many decades now. We don't have strong families.
That is
if you have
problem.
strong families, you have strong communities, and you have communities that understand freedom and responsibility.
100%. I mean, look, you can take almost all the problems. You really can. If you look for a direct line between what's wrong and the social problems we have in the world today, almost all of them have a direct line back to the destruction of families. Not the breaking down of families, the utter destruction which has been calculated and controlled, right?
Part of the plan.
Yeah, absolutely, right. America's a very interesting case study as far as the African American population. When you look at how families were and the statistics before and after the Civil civil movement. What's the
Civil
word?
rights movement.
Thank you. Civil War's just a little bit earlier. But when you look at those stats, they've completely flipped the other way around. I'm sorry not to have the exact figures right now, but it was essentially around a situation of before the civil rights movement, black families were together, and 75% of those families had the father in the household, right? And after the movement, it is currently around 25%. I mean, that's just horrendous. And that has been done by design, and that obviously weakens the family unit, and that creates crime, that creates these machete issues and so much more.
One of the things that I noticed working in a law firm is that the complexity of family or estate planning got so much more complex as time went by.
Yeah.
Because you're dealing with people with second, third, fourth marriages and children by those different marriages as well. That, for a lawyer, gets very complex in planning who inherits what when it comes to a will, how it can be challenged, and all this sort of stuff. We as a society have made things very complicated and overcomplicated.
Totally agree with that. Yeah, absolutely. I think about what you've just said about the estate planning kind of thing. It's so many people have passed away, and they believe their children are going to be looked after, that they've done the right thing, and then somebody who sweeps in and takes it all away. And again, sadly, it's generally about very nefarious and negative reasons. And again, it comes down to decay of society, I guess.
I'd like to, if we could, we mentioned freedom of speech. I've prepared some videos today, which I think really add to the complexity of what we're saying. I mean, we start with the Joe Rogan one, if we could, for a moment, and it kind of highlights the situation, and then we'll go into the why after that in the next video. Check out this.
Okay, which has had more than 12,000 arrests for very mild social media posts.
Isn't that crazy? I mean, I can't believe it. I've been watching this stuff play out.
Fascinating, and the fact that our mainstream media is relatively silent on this is insane. You're seeing a complete, total attack on one of the most fundamental principles of the Western world, which is your ability to express yourself. And your ability to call out that you think that the policies that are being implemented in your country are destructive. That's people have always been able to do that. These people are not calling for violence. They're being arrested for wild things. People are being arrested for liking posts. They're being arrested. Some people were investigated for viewing posts. 12,000 people arrested by the police in the UK, the same place that just implemented digital ID. I mean, this is an Orwell nightmare coming to life right in front of our face, and no one's flinching. No one in America is freaking out about what's happening in the UK at all. I mean, you get people online that are kind of freaked out by it, but they're way more freaked out by nonsensical things like whether or not what Jimmy Kimmel said in his monologue was offensive. They'll go to the ends of the earth to fight that.
So thank you for Joe Rogan for doing that.
He just nailed it, honestly. And a couple of little facts to talk about there. So currently in the UK, around 30 people per day are being arrested for interacting with social media, right? Their comments, what they've liked, what they've watched. 30 people a day. Now, that is, to put it in perspective, that is a massive number compared to, say, countries like, say, I don't know, look, let's think of a nice freedom country, say North Korea. North Korea has a very, very small amount of people who are arrested for their social media posts. What a surprise. Now, don't get me wrong, their social media is a little bit different, a little bit more controlled. But when you're talking about, okay, the place, the UK, where all of this effectively started, it's just insane.
Well, it's expensive to put people in prison.
Yeah.
It's a cost to the state,
but
to the taxpayers to do that.
Yeah, but put rapists on the street, put machete-wielding lunatics, put people who are beheading people on the street, put them back on the street. But you know what? If Nana, right, puts a post up about, look, I don't know, the flags, she liked the flags that have been lining the streets of the UK, Nana gets a visit from the police. I mean, come on, right? Children as well. This is just insane.
It is insane.
It really is.
And it's a violation of fundamental rights.
Well, Joe's brought something up there too, as far as, okay, I'm so impressed with JD Vance on this. The fact that he's talking about and saying to these countries, effectively, we're going to find you economically accountable if you don't share the same values. Now, some people will go, oh, that's pushing your ideals on another country. And I'd be one of those guys who would normally say that because I don't like that. But why would you want to do business? Okay, you've got the freedom of your wallet, the freedom of control of your country's financials. Why would you want to give aid? Why would you want to do business with people who have an ideology so opposite to the fundamentals of what you believe? I don't understand.
I think it's interesting, that speech that JD Vance did say in February, I think it was, when he said, look, we used to share common values and now we don't. And you need to start looking at being more independent as far as defending your own borders are concerned. And what's happened since then is the EU has gone, oh dear, we need to up our game in terms of military spending. Let's make Germany the strong one. I was watching footage this morning of Putin saying, we've heard rumors that Germany is wanting to be the strongest thing. We will respond accordingly. And it's like, you can see how
history sort of wouldn't recommend that.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, definitely not. Not Germany.
No. And so you're shooting yourself in the foot basically by not allowing the people to have their freedoms, because it's going, this is affecting international ties here.
That's right.
And it's getting the ones that you're concerned about in terms of security, it's getting that on them on the radar now. It's it's just ironic. It
the
really
very
is.
nation that was said you can't have an army because you can't be trusted because you kind of started a couple of wars, don't know, World War I and II, right? Against the entire world. Now, I don't want to sort of shed negative light on the Germans, but like history does tend to repeat itself. And if we're not going to learn from history, then what are we going to learn from? If you look back all these conflicts through all of these years, if we're going to make Germany the police of Europe, I can't see that working.
The other part of that too is that European Union has come and said we need to up our spending as far as Greenland is concerned as well.
Oh, Greenland, how interesting!
because the interest that's over there on that piece of real estate. It's just really interesting, the ripple effect of everyone's responses and of the US foreign policy.
Oh, good old Greenland.
Have a look at this video here.
Okay.
This is really interesting in terms of, this is something I saw this morning. I thought, Aaron will like this.
Oh, geez, thanks, mate. I'm into this one.
Let's take a look at this.
That have coalesced. One is in Europe, where it has laid waste to free speech. Germany, France, England, free speech has been eviscerated. And also places like Canada. The U.S. anti-free speech movement began in higher education, then metastasized throughout the government. But this has all reached our shores now. The Berlin World Forum followed the remarks of Vice President Vance on free speech, and the EU was red hot. They gathered in Berlin, and it was the most anti-free speech gathering I've ever been part of. There's only two of us from the free speech community. And they are committed. And, Hillary Clinton was there, and she really fueled the anger. I mean, she, when Twitter was purchased by Elon Musk, she called on the EU to use the infamous Digital Services Act, which is one of the most anti-free speech pieces of legislation in decades. And she called upon the EU to use the DSA to force the censorship of American citizens, force people like Musk to censor. It's an extraordinary act by someone who was once a presidential candidate in the United States. But they are committed to it. And after the World Forum, they further globalized this effort, and they are threatening companies like X with ruinous fines unless they resume censoring American citizens.
Well, I mean, the Hillary Clinton, she's the standard. That's the standard we should all try to achieve in life. For transparency. Let's not talk about emails. She's a warmonger, and someone who's so fundamentally against free speech, and she was literally trying to influence the EU. What do you say to that, gents?
I think Hillary Clinton is part of the evil empire. She's certainly part of the movement by the globalists to try to silence the citizens of the world, especially those who believe in freedom and free speech, freedom of expression, freedom of faith, freedom of movement, freedom. They want to restrict the rights and freedoms of free people. Why? Because they want to control them. It's not about anything but control. And everything that they've tried to do, both here in the United States and in Europe and everywhere else, is try to control and limit the freedom of people. Farmers growing crops. I mean, it doesn't really matter what the topic is. This is what these idiots are trying to do. They're being destructive of their own civilizations. They're being destructive of Western values. I mean, my God, Putin actually is more conservative than these asswipes. I mean, look at and he's against these people. I'm wondering. It's ridiculous what's happening among our Western allies and the people that permit this kind of thing to happen. Now, Trump won't permit it. He's going to put his foot down, because this kind of thing will not be permitted in the United States. There'll be a backlash from anything that these goons try to do to restrict the freedom of speech in the United States. Well, and for that matter, around the world and in the Western governments. If the U.S. has anything to do about it, we'll step in and stop this. Now, we'll see how this all rolls. I mean, people like Hillary Clinton are just trying. Okay, so this is what the Democrats do. This is what the liberals do. They just double down on this crap, and they keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing. And then they get slapped down by the people because the people won't put up with it. Sooner or later, what's going to happen is the people will rebel and stand up for themselves. And it's as far as I'm concerned, it's not too early for people to stand up now and stand for freedom. It's not deal with this tyranny. In the Western world, our values are against tyranny. It's pro-democracy, pro-free speech, anti-socialism, and pro-freedom and accountability and responsibility.
Well, Dan, if you look at what's been going on in the UK over the last few days, or certainly quite a while, but the protests and the patriotism that's just stepped up. I mean, just over the last few days, there was a gentleman who actually climbed on, and I'm sorry, I don't know the name of the monument, but a lion there.
Trafalgar Square?
Yes, absolutely. But yeah, on the line.
Oh, yeah.
Who was holding a cross and a flag as well, and climbing up there, and there were just thousands and thousands. I couldn't put a number. I would comfortably say tens of thousands of people underneath him. I couldn't see from the video. It didn't show the size of the crowd. It showed it was very vast. So people are standing up. People have had enough. If you look at the Reform Party, there's been elections over the last week or so in the UK, which has changed a lot in the councils, where the Reform Party is pretty well taken over. If an election was held tomorrow, Nigel Farage would be running that country. It's as simple as that. People have had enough of the Labor or the whatever you want to call them in all of these different markets, because that's pretty much what it comes down to. So I'm wondering, can this be won without it turning into some sort of civil war? I really kind of hope so, if it can be done without sort of bloodshed.
The left wants a civil war.
I agree.
The left wants a civil war. They've been begging for a civil war. But the problem is that God-fearing, faithful people who are conservative do not want a fight. They want to do this through peaceful means and stand up and protest in a respectful way, standing for freedom, liberty, their rights, their families, their faith. That's how we are. Just see what happened after Charlie Kirk was killed. This is how we roll.
That's right.
We don't burn. We don't thieve. We don't have mostly peaceful protests. We are responsible citizens. We take our freedom and we mean it. Yeah. And so we need to stand. And people around the world who believe in their freedom need to stand. You know, there are more of us than there are of them. That's the point. The goons, I don't care, corrupt cops, whatever they are, they need to be stopped. People need to stand up against them, but do it peacefully. Do it without arms or anything else. Now, in the United States, we had a revolution about this whole damn thing, right? I mean, we fought the British because they're a bunch of assholes, right? So, I mean, if they want to do the same sort of thing, this is really about the socialists, the billionaires and others who are seeking for power in Switzerland and around the EU and that kind of thing. That's what this is about. That they want to social engineer their way into controlling people and their minds, their freedom, their well-being, everything else. We've got to stand up and be counted. And there are going to be enough people who have money that will stand up with us, like Elon Musk and others who won't go along with this agenda.
Interesting you just bring up money, though, because one thing I've certainly noticed, and I don't want to be, I don't know, I just don't want to be that guy, but I've certainly found here in Western Australia, and actually Australia-wide, because obviously we're associated with many, organisations here, with the Light newspaper, with Turning Point Australia, the ARC, all of that. I'm very, very, very disappointed by the lack of financial support and people putting their money where their mouth is when it comes to the conservative side of politics. It's a problem. Those who have the means tend to talk a lot and sit on their hands. I see a lot of that.
Well, we're not organized. We're not united. There's been a lot of money going into Charlie Kirk's organization since he was killed. The thing is, we do not unite in a way that we work as a block. We work in a united way. Yeah. If we did, there's more of us than them. There's more money. There are more people who run businesses and everything else around the world that have money and resources that believe in freedom than there are these goons that have bled us dry, the Draculas of the world, right? So we need to stand up, and people need to be counted. People who believe in freedom. And you're right, but we need to have a united front, and there hasn't been.
Well, I think part of it too is that those conservatives who felt like they were being represented by certain groups have realized that those groups no longer represent them, or they haven't woken up to that. I'll give you a case in point. I think we're finding this in Australia, where the Liberal Party has become so left and middle left that a lot of the conservatives go, we no longer identify with them. Who can we now get to represent us in that cause? And of course, I think it's still early days in terms of the mindsets of many conservatives in Australia who are looking for that representation and trying to get someone to identify and stand up and say, yes, we identify with you in terms of your policies. You've got a lot of minority groups who in Australia in politics are on the right side.
Sure.
Yes, okay, they sometimes difficult to come together and agree on certain policies and that sort of thing. Whereas on the left, you've pretty much, it's pretty clear cut. Although there is quite diversity in terms of the left as well. If you actually drill deeper, there's a lot of little subgroups there that don't get the.
It is a great point, but the other point of that is, okay, with the left, even if they disagree with each other, they actually get on board with the whole cause. So they swallow the whole damn thing.
Yeah.
In Australia, so I can't speak for the rest of the world, but certainly in Australia, what I found with the smaller parties, although that they might be aligned, there might be 10 issues, and they're aligned on, say, 8. But they won't work together because they don't align on everything. It's just ridiculous.
Well, it's also a different culture. I was talking to someone who was involved in state politics, is out of the scene now.
Okay.
And so it's changed since they've been involved. But they were saying to me that, that Labor particularly moves like a pack, like wolves.
So
they just move like that. Where it says the Liberal Party, they're mostly made up of business owners, and they help each other out, but they expect you to take responsibility and do it yourself type of thing. And so it's a different culture within those two parties. It's kind of like the entrepreneur versus
that's exactly what it's like. Really.
Entrepreneurs, we'll help each other out with network, but we're not going to come over and take over your business.
Well, here's the problem. The left has an agenda, and they're following it. The right needs to get its act together and figure out what its agenda is if it wants to defend freedom, responsibility, faith, family, other things. Yes, everybody has to take responsibility, but we have to work together as one to defend freedom. We need to fly the title of liberty from our towers. Family, faith, freedom. Family, faith, freedom.
Agreed. But again, and being the broken record, it is absolutely time for those in business in Australia particularly to step up and put your money where your mouth is. When we are fighting against these absolutely gigantic corporations that are pushing, and I'm talking about the corporate media here, I'm talking about the far left agenda that's being pushed. In this state here, we've got pretty well, we've got one political party, let's cut the crap, we're really a one-party state. We're also effectively, apart from a small little bit of dissidence, the media here is controlled by effectively one man. This should not happen.
But you've got multi big corporations, right, who are working with the left to enforce what the left does. So let me give you an example. Any business that has a license attached to it does not want to upset the government because they want to be able to do the profits they're doing, to hang on to that license. So they're bought out on that. The fear of losing your license is greater than actually standing up for a political cause. And I think that's what you're finding. I think you're referring to the small, medium enterprises, right?
Yeah.
Who, a lot of those organizations, a lot of those businesses are just trying to make a buck and to get through making a profit at the end of the day, paying their employees and doing well, but it's hard doing business, Aaron.
Very, very hard.
I hear what you're saying, but at the same time, the small medium enterprises don't have the luxury of having lawyers to defend them. They have to go hire one. Whereas the big corporates, they have their own legal department, full time, several of them working on the office and making sure that they're all compliant, they're all doing their due diligence, and case by case, any case that comes up, hey, we get the lawyers involved, and it's a totally different culture.
And they have their fixers. They have their fixers.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So and they tend to work more with government because of that license factor.
Correct. There's a lot of things we're working on at the moment with different entities, which is really amplifying this, and it's quite frustrating when you see how much the government is even very, very big industries here in WA are being controlled so much by the government that they find that they can't actually even do their job properly. There's so much money being laundered into other causes that the government just have their hands in all of these pies, and ultimately, I'm about smaller government. And when I was talking to a particular organisation just the other day on Friday, they were saying the massive amount of money being taken from licence fees, all of that per year, and a percentage of what they're doing, but they're getting nothing in return. But you're right, they feel I've got no choice. They feel that the government's got complete control of it.
I've seen businesses that are terrified of the government representative coming in who has the power to shut them down in any moment because they hold the power of the license, right? Yeah. I've seen them, and it changes their behavior, changes the behavior of their staff, the way they treat their staff. They go on, if something comes up and there's a problem, it's like a witch hunt. And to be seen to have done the right thing, we sorted this out, we dealt with this person, we suspended them, or we fired them, or we penalised them this way.
About the optics.
Yeah, a lot of it is about optics, and it's like that's not actually the truth, though.
No.
It's not actually what happened. And,
Never.
that employee doesn't have the financial backing to go get legal representation to stand up and go, hey, I did the right thing here. I'm being the scapegoat.
And then if you go to the organisations, the ombudsman, or you go to any of the tribunals, they are so government controlled anyway that you get nowhere. You absolutely get nowhere. I mean, it's this, again, it all comes down to the reality is we are over governed. It is lunacy.
You need to find a way to reclaim your fundamental rights in Australia. You are not being treated properly by your government. You don't have a constitution that protects the freedoms that are inalienable. The government has no right to govern by its fiat. It is only given that power by the people. And you guys are doing it to yourselves because you can't grow a pair and stand up to the tyranny within your own government to be able to create a better union, establish those kinds of things that would bring you more freedom and more actually economic freedom and well-being. Talk to Trump about it. Get Trump in there to help you guys get.
Well, hang on, we've got a prime minister who, over the last week, has been praised to the hilt about his alliance with Keir Starmer, with all of these very controlling people. They're talking about at the UN. They're talking about him like he's a Labour hero, like he's a socialist hero.
Well, he is for their cause.
He is for their cause, but the Australian people, like everybody I speak to, honestly, it blows my mind. And I take them wrong. I'm not saying it was an illegitimate election or anything like that, but I maybe it's the people I speak to, but I speak to a lot of people, and no one seems to have voted for him, or will they just not admit to it?
Well,
same thing with Biden.
We got 1/3 of the primary vote, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think what happened in the last election was a lot of people didn't vote Liberal because they didn't feel it's like the uni party.
Yep.
So the protest vote went, okay, we're going to go for the minor parties on the right.
Yep.
Right. But they're not strong enough to actually get enough of the vote and with the preferentials to actually hold power.
Okay. And here's a great sort of look. Backtrack on this one. I'm going to.
We're not a first past the post system here. We're a preferential system.
I'm going to Saki this one. Okay. I'm going to circle back. Right. Okay. The Shooters and Fishers, okay, the party here in Australia, gave their preferences to the Labor Party, the same people who are now taking away the rights from the Shooters and Fishers. It's just a joke, an absolute joke. We are out of time, gents. Would you like to make some closing comments there, Dan?
We need to stand for freedom and liberty. We need to stand for faith, families, and freedom, or we will lose it. That goes for people all around the world, both in America, in the UK, in Australia, and everywhere around the free world, even in Russia or anywhere else, really, or Vietnam, where Travis is. You've got to stand for your freedom, or you'll lose the freedom. And you guys have gone a long way already to losing your freedom, because you haven't stood up to it.
Derek, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with Dan. Freedom comes at a price. We've seen certainly that price, and I think a lot of people. It's sobering. What bigger price will you pay, and what's the cost if you don't? And I think that's most people think, what is the price if I do? I think you've got to think on the other side of the coin too. What is the price if we don't, for your children, your grandchildren?
Thoroughly agree. Thank you for being part of the show. It's Freedom Fridays here on Edge Radio Australia.